Happy New Year! Welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm going to share with you a very simple recipe on how to make chin chin. It's a very delicious snack in Cameroon or in Africa, especially Cameroon, Nigeria, and Ghana. So I'm going to share with you the ingredients. So I have some eggs at room temperature. I have some flour. You can use all-purpose flour and butter. I also have some sugar. I have some condensed or evaporated milk. You can use regular milk or you can use even powdered milk and dissolve it in water. And then I have some baking powder and nutmeg, but you can use whatever flavor you want to use. It's up to you, but we usually use nutmeg or we sometimes use lemon zest. And I also have a mixing bowl or measuring spoon and a whisk so I can mix up my wet ingredients. I chose to use some transparent disposable gloves. You don't necessarily have to, you can just wash your hands and use, but because I had artificial nails on, I didn't feel comfortable using my bare hands, so I decided to use gloves. So in this bowl I have my eggs, the milk and the sugar. So I mixed all the wet ingredients in one bowl and added the sugar in it. So that's what you see me mixing. Set that aside, and then in the second bowl where I have the flour and butter, I'm gonna add some baking powder. I'm gonna leave the exact measurements in the description box below, so make sure you check that out if you want to try this recipe. So I added the baking powder, and here I'm just gonna sprinkle some of the nutmeg. Again, you can use whatever flavor you want. You can even use lemon zest. So I had my gloves on and then I began by mixing the butter, the flour, baking powder and nutmeg. So you see me struggling here because I didn't have my butter out in time for it to get to room temperature. So it's still a little too cold and hard. So that's why you see me struggling to mix it here. But after a few minutes, I eventually got it mixed properly in the flour, and I'm gonna add the egg and milk mixture into it. You can always pour everything at once, but it's just easier in my opinion to do half and half. So I poured half of the wet mixture into the dry mixture and I mixed that properly. And then I added the second half of the wet mixture into the dry mixture, like so. And then I continued mixing. Again, I decided to use gloves because I had artificial nails which are long. I didn't feel like I could clean them properly, and also it's holidays, so people might be coming home and they'll have to eat the snack. But if you're doing it for your home and not for any visitors, you can go ahead and just wash your nails, especially if you have short clean nails. You can just wash your nails and do the mixture. So this is what you should end up with. I took up my gloves and washed my hands. You should also have a clean surface. I'm just going to use the countertop here. I cleaned it properly. You need a rolling pin, some dry flour, and then your knife because you're going to have to cut the dough. If you're going to use your countertop, make sure the knife is not going to destroy it. So I applied some powder on the countertop just to make the dough a little matte and easy to work with, because you have to roll the dough, right? So you don't want it to sticky on the countertop or the rolling pin. So you see me struggling here. I had to add more powder, but you don't want to add too much powder because you're going to see later on what that does when you're deep frying your snack. So I just roll it to a very thin layer, but not too thin too, because it's gonna be too crunchy and it might easily get burned. So here I'm gonna show you 3 methods you can use to do your snack. The first method was what I use, or what we used in my home growing up. Every Christmas Eve we did this. So you cut the dough into big chunks like that. You make a little hole in the center, and then you take one end and pass it through the hole and pull it out, just like that. The second method is just gonna be long and thin. So you cut the dough thin, long slices, and then you just chop it into little pieces. The third method, it's similar to the second method, but you make it a little wider and shorter, just like that. Whichever method works for you. So I just kept doing that for the rest of the dough. Usually when I get to about half point of my dough, I try to get my oil on the fire. So if you don't have a deep fryer like I do, you can use your pot on the stove and just put it on medium heat. But here I have a deep fryer. I set it to 350 degrees and let it heat up while I continue the rest of my dough. So this time I wanted to go with the easiest method, so I chose the thin, long method. And here I'm going to show you an easier way to get it done faster, because if you want to do it one at a time, it's going to be very time consuming. So you can just do a bunch of strips like that, just like I did, and then come back and cut them just like I'm doing. That way you're doing like 5 or 6 of them at the same time, as opposed to doing one at a time, you know. So by the time I'm done, my oil is warm enough. If you're doing it in a pot, it'll be nice to just do a test with one, drop it in the oil and see how it does. That's going to tell you if it's warm enough. So you just drop your dough in there and start frying. So remember how I said don't use a lot of flour when you're prepping the dough? This is why. If you use a lot of flour, you're going to have a lot of foaming when you're frying. So try not to use a lot of flour when you're wrapping your dough. But anyways, life happens and there's a lot of foaming. So if you have a deep fryer like I do, I just stand there for a few minutes, raise the basket in and out of the deep fryer until the oil settles in. But if you're using a pot, then you're going to stand there and stir it for a few minutes until it settles in. And then once you have the color that you want, then you take it out. I usually set mine on a paper towel just to soak in any extra oil, and that's what it looks like. Very delicious. Good for your parties. So thank you for watching.